very quick story we may all be able to relate to, about a patriarch who had a serious hearing problem. Years later, and with new technology, he was fitted with a non-visible hearing aid for 100% clarity. A month later, the doctor came in and said, "Your family must be so happy that you can hear again." The gentleman replied, "Oh, I haven't told my family yet." I just sit around and listen to what everybody says. But I have changed my will at least 3 times and I'm about to do it again. Welcome to the Dynasty Family panel. We all grew up in a very unique world. We all grew up in dynasty families, where our name was immediately associated to our family's name. Even though it is certainly an exceptional door opener in the cities and states that our families come from, it comes with a great responsibility. It's up to us to uphold our family's legacy. Sharon Bush, my dear friend, has streets, aircraft carriers, international airports, presidential centers, and CIA headquarters named after her family. For 4 generations, the Bush family has been one of North America's foremost political dynasties. George Bush Sr. was one of my father's business partners, and we both grew up in the oil and gas industry. Patricia, your husband, John Kluge, came to America as a German immigrant and studied at Columbia and started investing in television stations. He amassed a fortune buying and selling telecom businesses, eventually selling to WorldCom. He became the richest man in America in 1989, earning over $11 billion in his lifetime. In each of our cases, our family name is a brand. Thus, actions and decisions of past and present generations affect family leaders positively and negatively. In each case, we all have to navigate an increasingly complex world. On one hand, protecting our family's names, and on the other, letting our own personal voices be heard without letting down the legacy. This presents some unique challenges. Please, will both of you please tell us how you navigated this balance? Sharon.
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. I think, I raised my children. My eldest is now 32, so it was before the internet was as crazy as it is now. So it made it a bit easier to keep them in line, make sure I knew who they were with, what they were doing, because the conflicts, what comes up now on TV, I feel sorry for any politician's family that has to deal with all the craziness. So I feel it from a whole different generation, almost, it's just changed so much. I just really kept them in line. I think that was the basic thing that I could say that I did to raise my 3 children to all be not only entrepreneurs, but to give back and to care about the legacy, and also to build big companies that give back. And I'll tell you more about that later, but I'm very proud that they have embraced the Bush name and stood on their grandfather's shoulders to make the name just as important as it was when he was president.
So, good afternoon, everyone. In my case, when I met John Kluge, he was in the throes of being the 4th network, which was rather extraordinary in those days because ABC, NBC, and CBS dominated the marketplace. He had an idea of creating a network that was going to show reruns. He was the father of that idea. I decided when we got married that my responsibility to our relationship, to our marriage and family, was to raise the next generation to understand what their father's legacy is and how I can prepare them to maybe not necessarily take over, but maybe to sort of walk in their father's footsteps, but on their own merit and in their own way. So what was that? What did that mean for us? It meant education, it meant money, and it also meant property. So I really raised them with those ideas ahead, but also John was very, very adamant about not necessarily giving them a large inheritance, but giving them enough so that they can stand on their own feet, but be their own individuals. I didn't understand that at the beginning, but it turned out to be the most wonderful thing for my son and for his children, who I actually raised as well. And why was that? Because my son, for instance, today is very happy in what he does, and he learns so much from his father's giving. So having a child you encourage to fulfill his own personal ambition is a great thing. My stepdaughter, Samantha Kluge, is today, so my son has his own fund with his wife, and what they do is they incubate entrepreneurial ideas for refugees, and they're part of a network globally that has $1 billion to deploy all over the world. And he's currently working on a project in Jordan where some refugees have come together. They want to start a food company, and what they're going to do is they're going to sort of help them put that whole thing together and then give it to a major American corporation to manage and run and grow, because obviously they're not going to sell just to refugees. They're going to build a large company from that. So that's what he does. My stepdaughter, Samantha Kluge, who had a troubled youth, but has managed to get out of that, be a wonderful mother, and a very giving, thoughtful human being. She works with mothers, drug-addicted mothers, who are single mothers with children. She is a single mother with a child, but she's no longer on drugs or anything. She's actually clean and has been clean for 12 years now, and has a wonderful child, so bright. So that's how she has decided to devote her life to helping others come out of that horrible quagmire and see what they have as human beings and value their children. And she's been very successful. There's nothing like learning from somebody who's been there. My other stepdaughter we started a scholarship for her sister who died by accident, suddenly at the age of 26 by drinking too much water. Her electrolytes gave out. And so she is now investing in, and she was an art major at her school, so she's now investing in very talented students by giving them little scholarships in art, whether it's music or painting or drama, in memory of her sister. But what they have learned is that it's not only about survival for yourself, it's about helping others survive as well. And that I think is a magical idea. It's a realization that you come to only really if you have come from money, if you know what I mean, because you have the luxury to think that way. So education, money, property, training, and purpose. So that was my whole concept of how a child should grow. At a certain point after they graduate, there is also, what is the clarity? What is the clarity of all of that? And they have realized their clarity. So from success, now we are on the way to significance. So they're all in their 30s now, one of them is their 40s. So we're going to go baby steps from success to significance, and we'll see how that works.
So every family has conflicts. I know without a shadow of a doubt that some of these conflicts cannot be resolved. For instance, in my families, or in many families where there's a lot of money, people with the wrong motives are attracted to it. My father's second marriage was to a secretary who loved his money but hated his children, AKA her nickname is Step Monster. This is an often heard story in big families. I've heard it said, families are like fudge, mostly sweet with a few nuts. When personalities find irreconcilable differences, life is a lot less stressful and happier when you just stay away from the difficult, negative, toxic relationships, or in this case, relations. My question is to my panelists, do you all agree? Or do you think that it is important to continue the hard work of repairing and mending the hardest family relationships, even if you feel you're banging your head against the wall every time you try? And I know all three of us, Sharon and I, have had to bang our head at certain times. What would you like to say about
My personal experience in family conflict comes from the fact that when I married John, he already had a family. And of course, you're always the monster who breaks up the family fabric. But really, a family doesn't break up unless it's already broken. So what I actually did, I went out of my way to be, no, he had one daughter and one stepson. So I went out of my way to be close to Samantha, because Samantha was only 6 years old when I met her. And a 6-year-old, you can imagine meeting her father's girlfriend and then suddenly becoming your stepmother is a traumatic experience for a child. I remember the first time I met her, it was at a friend's shooting lodge in Nova Scotia. And she had her a doll that she had from birth. I think it's called, is it a Raggedy Ann doll or something? Yeah. So for some reason, the dog got hold of it and tore the whole thing up. So she was so traumatized, it was too much, and I saw her and I thought that was really far too much for a child of 6 to go through one day. Meeting her father's girlfriend, knowing they were going to get married, and now her favorite secure doll is torn up to pieces by a dog. So what I did, I hugged her and I took her to the bedroom. I got one of my night dresses and I tore it all up. And I sewed the Raggedy Ann back together again. Sewed the whole thing. We are like that since that day. That moment, she knew that whatever was happening in her life, I was there for her. And I think people who marry into families who already have children, it is their human duty to go out of your way to really connect with the children. Because think about it, you are now in their father's life. They want to know that they still have their father. And it's very important for you to let them know that their father will always be your father. Their father is that you love them too. So, it's complicated and yet it's simple. But I think it's very, very important to do that. I am very close to all my stepchildren.
Sharon, you've helped build a school system for low-income children, which went from 2 schools to 200 schools. You and your daughter, Lauren Bush started a company that last year, on its 10th anniversary, has delivered over 100 million meals to starving children. You have been an advocate for women's and children's causes as chairman of many benefits, giving away and raising tens of millions of dollars. Please tell us more about your work.
Well, as I was saying earlier, I started when my children were very young, and because they were surrounded by privilege, and of course we had Secret Service on and off through all those years, and they were in private schools to keep them safe. So I started off by taking them to soup kitchens and homeless shelters when they were 4. And they had to, as they got a little older, they had to take part in serving the soup and really understanding humanity and seeing what the big world was about. And I didn't realize how important that was at such a young age. But they all grew into doing these amazing things to help others. My son runs Big Brothers Big Sisters for all of Texas. He helped build their main campus. He raised the millions of dollars for it in Houston. That just opened last year. And as you mentioned, my Lauren and I built a company. Well, I built a company when they were younger, and they took part in that. And we gave all the proceeds away. Lauren was very smart. Mine was nonprofit, her feedback. And she started a for-profit giving to nonprofits because you also need to save money. She was one of the first, similar to Tom Shoes, Blake Mikowski. And she's given away, as she said, more than 100 million meals. And my youngest, on her own, volunteers to help women in safe homes, to tutor them. But what I saw, and as they grew up, it kept them balanced. It kept them not to feel privileged. It helped them feel more empowered about themselves. They took on more responsibility, and it made them see the big world. And so in many ways, I just encourage, all of you in the room are from wealthy families, or you've built your own wealth. And I think it's so important to expose our children and not just throw them money so they can buy a Prada bag or whatever, but just to get out there and help others. I mean, in my case, because my children are all older now, I can say that they never got into drugs or alcohol. I mean, there's so many vices out there that these children get into. And just to be a good leader for others, to help others, and at a young age, it made a big difference. And what I did also, there's always a member in the family, unfortunately, who gets caught in drugs, and I use that person as an example. I said, you don't ever want to, and you do that when they're young also, you don't ever want to end up like that. And it scared the hell out of them at a young age, so it really did help. And the school that Jen mentioned, I was on the founding board of KIPP Academy. I don't know if you've ever heard of KIPP. It's for disadvantaged children, and we had one school at the time. Now there's more than 200 around the country, getting children all the way through high school. Their families, none of them have ever, and going on to college. And these children, no one in the families usually even graduate from high school. So it's really life-changing. And it stands for Knowledge is Power Program, KIPP.
Well, Sharon, knowing all three of your kids and watching them to some extent grow up in recent years, they are remarkable, and you are. And you, as I remember, many years ago, I can't remember how many years ago, you won the Mother of the Year award. I've known you for too many years, so I can't remember when, but it might have been 8 or 9 years ago, so that you won this award of Mother of the Year for some big organization.
Thank you for mentioning that. You know, if you're a mother, I mean, you only get one chance to do it, and so it was really important to me to stay focused on that, and it was the biggest honor for me. I mean, my children are still my best friends at all grown, but I feel very privileged that we're that close. And someone told me this a long time ago, and of course it's even in the Bible. I mean, St. John said, if I can give you one word, it's love. And to teach your children love, that you love them more than anything. So
I do everything I can with my 14-year-old teenager to try to help him to understand that giving back and morals and values and being a good person and trying to make as big a difference as you can in this world is really the most important thing that we have. Patricia, I'd like to turn to you. You played an integral part in helping your husband build his empire, and you have always had entrepreneurial ventures across the board, including your current passion and creativity for your jewelry.com. Talk to us a little bit about some of the entrepreneurial things you've done and what you're focused on and passionate about now.
I'm very lucky to have the ability to look at old industries and think of new ways to make them relevant in the current age. So it is in a small way. I've done that in soccer cars and sports in Europe. I've done that with lean beef in America, and I've done that with wines in Virginia. Always developing the product, finding the marketplace, and selling it to the right person. So that's what I do. And at the moment, knowing that, seeing that the world is making more money now, it's prospering, and that luxury has come back again, building a luxury jewelry.com. When I say luxury, it means from 10,000 to 400,000 a piece. So I can't tell you any more about it, but that's because we're still in the incubation part, and that's what I do. And my garden furniture is a very well-known English designer who does all the summer exhibits at Buckingham Palace, and it's manufactured by a Royal Warrant carpenter in Norfolk. So these are my two projects. With regards to giving, my grandmother, mother, and I went to the same convent, educated by some of the same nuns. And from a very, very early age, I was taught that giving was a very important part of one's daily life. Whether you give friendship to a neighbor, whether you give a bowl of soup for a traveler, whether you give a little bit of money for somebody who is in need. My grandmother came from Mosul. I don't know if you've heard of Mosul. It's in northern Iraq, which was devastated by ISIS, a very historic religious community, Chaldean. And she was educated by French nuns, our school, spoke 7 languages, so she was unique in her community at that time. Can you imagine? She was born in 26 1917 or something. So anyway, so whenever travelers would come down to Baghdad, they would stop at her house, and there was always a bowl of soup, there was always a cup of rice, there was always, like 5 dinars, or a place to stay. I saw this growing up. Now, why was my grandmother doing it? Because it was the right thing to do. It was never about why you're doing it. It was about somebody who needed a place to stay, somebody needed some money. You just did it to help them move on to wherever they were going. So I grew up in a family like that, and my mother was the same. So as an adult, when I came to America, Europe at the time, England was not like that. It was a whole different thingy. But I came to America, and I saw a system in the United States that was like my grandmother. Giving was so normal here, so important. All our institutions stand because an industrialist gave that institution to the community. And also being married to John, who was an immigrant and who understands how kindness helped make him the man that he is today. He obviously gave most of his fortune to charities. So yes, giving is not only in my DNA and in my heart, but it also happens to be in my children's heart. So that includes my stepchildren, my son, my stepdaughters, and what can I say? It's the only way to be. And I think everybody who has a child or a grandchild, it's very important to instill that in them at a very early age. And then what do you have? You have a magnificent human being who will literally change lives forever, beyond giving someone a job. Beyond giving somebody what's the expression? You don't give them a fish, but give them a fishing rod or whatever. So, yeah. So that's what I feel about giving.
Looks like it's turning into the Dynasty Charity panel. My next question is that knowing all these panelists for many years, I know that we all deeply believe that it is a privilege, not a right, to be part of a dynasty, family, and legacy. With this does come, as both of the panelists have mentioned, the right and the obligation to help those less fortunate. I can attest to the great ways that both of these panelists have done and watched what they've done with their children. And in this entitled community, I think we all need to use our skills, our knowledge, our power, our connections to make as big a difference as we possibly can. I'm looking forward to hearing how both of you really are passionate about making a difference. In my case, I care deeply about macroeconomic solutions for a world drowning in debt and excessive monetary stimulus. And the last question that I think it was this gentleman asked was right up my alley. I think that our children are going to have a lot of problems to face if we don't do something clever and quick. I also believe that the poorest children in the world that have no hope for a better future and have no advocates are the children that we should focus on. And I hope in my life and in my future that I will be able to make as big a difference as possible in those two areas. Would each of you give me a quick, last, short description of anything else that we missed that inspires you or that you and your families are doing to make a difference? Sharon?
Well, what I'm doing now, I don't know if you've heard of the Cristo Rey school system. There's 35 of them around the country, started by a Jesuit priest. And it's high school for disadvantaged children, and I'm helping fundraise for them, the one in Brooklyn. And we take the most disadvantaged children and get them up to par in high school so that every child goes to college on full scholarship. I mean, from Harvard, Princeton, down to local colleges. But it's life-changing for the families. I mean, I've met the parents, some of them don't even speak English, and we're setting a whole new life for these children and try to change their life. And this is hard work for these teachers to take them from the backgrounds that they're in and get them to be college appropriate. They also work in offices 1 day a week. Each student has to work in an office, dress up, and go. They take the subway. It's an hour subway from Brooklyn to New York. And it may be just shredding paper or getting coffee, but they're in a whole new environment. They have to dress appropriately, and they're graded each time they show up. So it's a very important part of the process. And if it's whatever company that hires them, if it's American Express or Citibank, they pay for half of the tuition. And so it's my job to help supplement the other half. So if there's any of you in the room who'd be interested in this school, let me know, in the school system. But one thing, children watch what you do, so it's not just what you say. And I think that's one of the key things to remember when we're all, out there with our children and with the younger generation. And so whatever we can put back into the world to help, because as you said, it's very difficult for them now. I mean, with the bullying and the rates of suicide that's happening now, I mean, it's just, we just have to be a light in the world. The drugs, it's just, it's fighting against a big tide, a negative tide, I think.
It's true.
Patricia, any other comments?
Yes, I would love to say, a lot of businesses in the world today are sort of looking about their role in the world beyond making money, and an awful lot of them are sort of making a concerted effort to give a big chunk of their revenues to charities. What we're going to do is we're going to take our marketing budget and we're going to allocate part of that into areas. So we're going to use our marketing budget as a giving budget. And that works absolutely amazingly well, because what do you have? You have a community that's suddenly for you and will never forget you. And at the same time, you're changing their lives. So I just wanted to throw that in. That's what we're working on right. So we're writing the book on that right now.
I'd like to open up the panel for any questions from the audience. So many of these entitled children act like little Lord Fauntleroy, and they don't care about respect. They don't care about listening to anyone. They're able to keep their rooms a mess because there's a maid that's going to clean it up. And I've watched this happen in my own family with my brothers and my son. And so I think that you have to do whatever has to be done to make sure that they understand that they need, as my father used to say to me, or the stepmonster used to say to me, a real princess knows how to get down on the hands and clean the floor. So go clean the floor. And so, as hard as it was to live with the stepmonster, I did learn how to clean the floor. And I think there is some real strategy to that. And I grew up very differently because I grew up to be street smart. I grew up to be able to clean the floor. And even though it was a hard lesson. And when my son refused to learn how to clean his room and how to be respectful, I sent him to one of the top military academies, even if I have to teach him to also clean the floors and shine his shoes. I will do whatever it takes. I will not allow, like most big families, to have a spoiled child. And by the way, my girlfriends who couldn't control their children and did not have strong role models and did not take this kind of tactic are having real big problems. One of them, they're dealing with police, they're dealing with fights, they're dealing with all, drugs and all kinds of other issues. So I would say that if you have a difficult child and you're from a very wealthy family, don't do whatever you have to do to catch it at a young age, because I hope some of you will get to meet my remarkable son, Peter Bawden, who's in the back row, but he will be, and I think anybody who speaks to him will see that he's learned all of these lessons and you have to teach them at a young age, in my opinion.
I'd like to answer the question you asked, and that is beyond raising wonderful children. You're changing lives all around you. Those you touch are being changed forever. So it's like having an idea and building a business around it. You're really changing communities. You're changing future families. You're changing individuals who will then impact others, not just be model citizens and look after themselves and their family. you really are changing an awful lot just by virtue of changing that one person's life. And that is our duty and responsibility, because not everyone is privileged with an education or a family or lives in a neighborhood. We're all born even and equal. But then we start living in an environment or a community or whatever that doesn't support us in a way that brings out the best in us. So it's our duty as a community to be the ones to support those who need it most.
And I would say education is just key also. I mean, as big brothers, big sisters, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they mentor children and they make sure to check their grades and make sure they're staying in school and that they are, doing the best they can because, I mean, with education, I'm a teacher. I was a teacher a million years ago, but I know teaching taught me a lot about parenting when I saw the children that came through that didn't have the love or caring. And education is key. I know so many young people are going now to China, learning Chinese. I mean, it's a whole new landscape, but education and getting out there in the world and seeing the world is so important.
And I think Sharon just landed on a very important point, making sure that you stretch them and push them to do the best that they can. Being a Tiger mom, my son's also been taking Mandarin since he was 6 years old. Not very happily, but he one day will be able to speak Mandarin. You can all bet on that.